Everybody was healthy, got to spend time with their cousins. And it was good for my mom. We can see all of them. 6 o'clock, what are we waiting for? Mary? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure it's a good sheet. What are we waiting for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Mary. Mary, you ready? It's 6 o'clock. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
We'll call the meeting to order if those in the audience and the board would please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Raise your feet if you could please call the roll.
Trustee Mohigo,
Here.
trustee Cascarella,
Present.
trustee Brewer,
Present.
trustee Vaughn,
Here.
treasurer Fido is here. Madam Clerk?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. And tonight we have another one of our mixed emotion events. As we honor Robert Cassie, if you would meet me on the podium. I can't say that this is my favorite thing to do. Because I miss you guys. Everybody I know is leaving. Like, what's happening? Whereas Robert Cassie began his tenure as firefighter paramedic on January 5th, 2000, and was promoted with distinction to engineer on September 2nd, 2008. Robert's commitment and hard work led to his promotion to lieutenant on June 1 of 2020. And on January 8th of 2023, Robert Cassie was promoted to captain, where he provided his expertise and leadership to the department and to his shift. And whereas Captain Cassie has demonstrated exceptional dedication, expertise by assisting in numerous fire ground training evolutions, including vehicle extrication, fire attack, and pump operations. And whereas Robert has achieved and excelled in the ranks of firefighter, paramedic, engineer, lieutenant, and captain, and has honorably served in each role with professionalism and distinction. And whereas Robert is the senior captain of the Delta Township Fire Department and consistently exemplifies leadership, advanced medical proficiency, and operational command in his words and actions. And whereas Robert has been a trusted confidant, friend, and mentor to many members of the Delta Township Fire Department, both retired and currently employed, fostering a supportive and collaborative environment. Whereas Robert has been an instrumental member of the Delta Fire Department team, contributing significantly to the department's successes and operational effectiveness. His outstanding service, leadership, and contributions have paved a more inclusive and engaging Delta Township Fire Department. Now be it hereby resolved that the Delta Township Board hereby commends the dedicated 25 years of service of Robert C. Cassie to the residents of Delta Township and the broader community. And be it further resolved that the board hereby congratulates him on his retirement and sincerely offers best wishes for continued success and fulfillment in all his future endeavors. I so move. Absolutely. You're okay. Okay.
Enjoy your retirement.
Thank you for everything. Congratulations.
Thank you, Captain. Happy retirement. I will entertain a motion regarding the agenda.
Andrea,
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
is there support? Support. Thank you, Fonda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will give it just a second. And I will open the public hearing on the sign ordinance. If anyone has questions or wishes to speak to that issue. Anyone have questions for Peter? If not, I close the public hearing. Thank you. You have no communications, public comments? Anyone in the audience like to speak to something on the agenda or for the good of all? Seeing none. I move to the passage of ordinance that we just had a public hearing for, and I would entertain a motion. Andrea.
And I move that the Delta Township Board adopt amendments to Chapter 32, signs of the Delta Township Code of Ordinances. And that the township clerk is hereby directed to advertise this adoption in local newspapers.
Is there support?
Support.
Thank you. It's been moved and supported to accept the sign ordinance amendments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And now we have the consent agenda before us. Fonda,
I move the consent agenda as presented.
thank you.
Support.
Thank you. All those in, oh, roll call, sorry.
That's right. Trustee Brewer,
Yes.
trustee Coscarello,
Yes.
trustee Bowen,
Yes.
trustee Mohica,
Yes.
treasurer Fido is yay. Clerk Clark,
Yes,
you have 6 in the affirmative, Madam Clerk.
thank you. And now moving on to new items of business, the supervisor appointment. I would like to comment that Supervisor Fletcher, former Supervisor Fletcher did not take the oath of office, so the position is considered vacated. I would like to share with the board how we have since 2008, which is my point of reference, handled open positions that occurred during the middle of a term. And we have taken we've taken resumes and letters of intent. The board has reviewed them, decided who or how many to move forward for interviews, and then a vote was taken. I became clerk under that exact process in 2011. Fonda became a trustee in that process in 2018 or 19, I think. So we have 45 days. We can make this work. And I would like to discuss that. I scratched out a tentative calendar today in conversation with the Bureau and with the county clerk. And we have 45 days. So obviously, if we can't come to some kind of decision in 45 days, then we would be looking at an election, but it's thousands and thousands of dollars that I think is not a good use of the township's dollars. We have a process that we've set precedents on and it has worked well in the past, and I would entertain comments. Andrea.
Just a point of clarification, when you mentioned the 45 days, that is beginning January 1st as the first day.
January 2nd.
It is
It's the
January
2nd.
2nd.
Well, we went back and forth and everybody landed today on January 2nd. And that was our attorney's recommendation. It just wasn't originally how the Bureau counted. When we were casually talking about it, or I wrote it down wrong, which is entirely possible. But it would be, January 2nd would be day one. So
Okay.
we're looking at February 15th is our 45th day.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Dennis.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but when trustee Brewer was appointed, it was halfway through former trustee Dina Newman's term. So it was 2 years to make up the rest of the term for former trustee Newman,
Mhm.
if I recall correctly.
Roughly.
And I wasn't here when you were appointed clerk, but my understanding is the former clerk held the office and then resigned.
Correct.
Can you let the board know for how far along in that term was the former clerk when she resigned?
I came on with 15 months left in the term.
Okay, less than
14 months
less than
left in
half
the
the
term.
term. And, you know, as far as the election costs, I mean, there's already election that's been scheduled.
Correct.
So
We still pay our portion.
True, but, you know, I don't know what our portion is, you know, compared to when everybody has going to be voting anyway in every single precinct. So would the county then be picking up the entire cost of the election
No,
for Delta Township? If
No.
it was just the county millage proposal that was on the ballot?
if it were, yes.
Okay. And if a supervisor position was on the ballot, how would that break out?
We would pay half of the costs of Delta Township.
Okay. Assuming those are the only two jurisdictional issues that are on the ballot.
With that were the assumption, correct.
Right, okay. I just wanted to get a clarification on that.
But this appointment would not be for the entire 4-year term.
Right,
The appointment would be until someone would actually have to, sign up, jump in the race, so to speak, next April of 26.
right. There'll be another election midterm in
Correct.
26.
The gubernatorial election is in 26.
So given that, if I may follow up with a question, what would our portion be as far as the expense of holding the election?
In 26?
Yes,
It's all ours, with or without this being on the ballot.
all right.
Andrea? did
I
you-
was just gonna ask for a point of, just for a clarification of when that election is, and you stated that in 26. So we had the election this past November for the seat. It's been vacated.
So
There's a
April-
potential for a special election that is just temporary till next year.
Correct.
And we would cover half the cost, at least half the costs this year and the full cost next year. Okay, thank you.
We always are responsible for state and federal elections.
If it went to the special.
Is there something you want to share?
Well, he's asking about the
Yeah.
clarity if they go all the way to 2024. You mean 28?
No, if there's a special election in May, that would go for the remainder of the term.
To 28?
The appointment would go till 26.
Correct.
That's my
Which is my
understanding.
understanding.
Correct.
So they would, that next April would be the filing deadline for the August, November 26 ballots.
All right, I see confusion around the table here.
But if someone was elected in special election this year, they would not have to run in 26?
No, I believe it's my understanding they'd have to run in 26
So they'd have to run in 25, 26, and then that
Right.
would only be good until
and
28.
28. Correct.
Yeah, if they decided to run again.
Okay.
Yes, Karen.
No.
What?
If we accept resumes, what's the timeline are we looking at? What's the
Well,
timeline?
when I scratched it out this afternoon, I thought we could take resumes to, for example, next Friday, the 17th. Which is, because all of them, at both times we've done this with my seat and with Fonda's seat, you're still dealing with the 45 days that you've got to deal with. And then the board meets the 20th. We could have all of the resumes sent to us and review those. And then, for example, do interviews the 29th and the 30th, depending. We'd have two special meetings, which is what we have had historically. That's the process. And then we can either vote at the end of those. What we did with Fonda's seat was all the candidates were listed, everybody marked. I think 1, 2, and 3. Can't remember how they did exactly. I'd have to go back and look at that process. And then we have until February 15th. There's that end. That's our 45-day. Did you have a question, Fonda?
I do. I have a comment.
Uh-huh.
One is I am a little disappointed that we are not looking within the board.
We can be.
I haven't finished. Haven't finished. So I'm a little disappointed that the first conversation is about going to the outside. When I think everyone on this board is talented enough to serve in that supervisor role, not discounting what the public could bring to the table, because I welcome that. I entered in through that method. So I was just a little taken aback that that was the first course of recommendation coming out of your seat, is to do that, as opposed to saying, let's start off to see if there's interest here on the board. I am interested. I've made that known to all of you. That's no surprise.
There are a
Not
number that
finished.
are.
I have not finished. Sorry, Mary. So I would like to have an opportunity. I think everyone who's interested from the board should have an opportunity to present themselves. And then if that doesn't take place, the second course of action could be then we open it up. Ultimately, there's going to be a position available on the board because we're short a person. That's going to happen. So that's my take, is let's look within. We have such a great opportunity here now to reset the tone of the board. And I have faith in everybody on here. I do. I could stand behind anyone that's on here, really. If the work turns out one person gets more votes than the other, I'm okay with that, because we really have a good structure in place. We have an awesome administration that makes us look good every day of the week and does the work. And this position is really, it's a leadership position, but it is one vote. It's not somebody who's going to have a greater voice than anyone else on the table. That's not what we're looking for. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone that's going to bring unity back to this board and decorum. We need it. We've been through a lot in 2024, but it's time for a reset. And I would like to see that opportunity afforded to anyone who might be interested on the board first before going externally. Thank you.
Yes, Beth.
I would like to add my voice and support of that as well. I believe that several people have expressed interest in serving, and I think that that's the difference between the vacated clerk position and the vacated trustee position, is that there weren't people already on the board expressing interest, and we do have that interest. And I agree with Fonda that, you know, looking for someone to bring balance, to bring experience, to bring a trusted voice to a leadership position, I think that's what we should consider first.
There are 4 people interested. That's why I was thinking a way to approach it in a transparent way would be to open it to the public. That's what we've done with the positions that I'm aware of since 2008. That was my thought process, because there are 4 people on the board that are
Okay.
interested.
We'll get through that.
I'm gonna throw out a different perspective on this, that I'm not opposed to the process that's being suggested by trustee Brewer, but I think about this as what's the most democratic, you know? We had a general election for supervisor. And there were two candidates in the general election. There was the incumbent and there was a challenger. And there could be an argument made that the only way for an inclusive decision by the residents, the voters of Delta Township, to express their desire of who would they like to be supervisor for till 2026 is not through appointment, but by a special election. And those nominations would come from the respective parties, as we all know. And that would be the choice before the general elected in May, the May 6th election. And if we're going to argue about or think about, you know, representation and input, I think that's more holistic than what we're talking about here, in whether it's your process or whether it's even what Trustee Brewer is discussing. I'm just throwing that out because there is an argument that could be made that that is actually more of a representation and of a participation by the electorate of, you know, who the supervisor choice would be. So I don't want that to get lost in the discussion.
I appreciate what you're saying. I'm looking for what I perceived as the most transparent way of doing this. And our voters would not pick a candidate. And quite frankly, there could be multiple candidates interested, and the two particular parties, in this case, Democratic, Republican, and that is because, for the benefit of those of you in the audience, that is because it is a partisan position. So that's why the Eaton Republican Party would put forth one candidate and the Eaton Democratic Party would put forth one candidate. So I just looked at this as being a little more open and letting people express their interest, but yes.
Yeah, Mary, couple thoughts. I am conceptually supportive of the public application interview process. That I'm not opposed to. I'm not sure if it ends up being one and the same or there's much difference, or if we reach a consensus on the board for someone, a current member to serve in that capacity. But I am curious, can you just talk through, because you talked about a timeline, you mentioned the 45 days ends on February 15th. You talked about a timeline that was a public process. If we initially tried to entertain discussions or entertain the potential amongst the existing board members and then move to that process, and I know it's a little off the cuff, but can you just share a timeline when that would, how that might have to take place?
It could be any, it could be any way that we chose to do it. I mean, there could be nominations from tonight. There could be, the process could start tonight. We could say, we voted to eliminate committee of the whole, so we only have 2 meetings this month, tonight and the 20th, that are regular scheduled meetings, which was why I picked the 20th to discuss applications and letters. So we could have special meetings and do as many. When we did the public interviews for the manager's position, I don't remember, you two were on the board.
Yeah.
I don't remember if you were,
I
Andrea.
was not.
So we went through that process and came to no conclusion, stepped back for 6 months, and then went through that process again and were able to make an offer to Brian. So that's a little different because we had the 6 months leeway. We don't have 6 months leeway now. We have 45 days. No matter how we spend them, how we schedule them, we have 45 days. So it would require, definitely would require special meetings. No matter how we do it. Fonda.
I don't know. Karen had her hand up at all. I don't want to
Did you have
Before.
something else? Karen?
I had a question on if we do the special election, what kind of money are we looking at? What is, do you know?
The election for the township separate would be in the neighborhood of 40,000. So between 40 and 50,000. So we're looking at 20 to 25,000 for our portion of a May election would be my guess. We haven't done this since we had permanent absentee ballots, which changes it all because it's a lot of, there's $10,000 off the top in postage. Fonda?
I would propose that we have, I'm not making a motion yet, I'm just having a little discussion. A meeting next week, Monday, to talk about if there's interest on this board and see where we can go to flush that out. And then go into the schedule you talked about, which would be the following Monday, our scheduled board meeting. To, if we need to go to applicants in that process.
So when would you be looking then at, if the decision was made on the 20th to take applications, when would you be looking at a deadline for applications?
What deadline did you have in mind? You said.
I
you had a
don't have
recommended
one
schedule.
doing that because my process had applications due the 17th. Being
Can we
listing
have
it, making it
applications
known
due by the
public tomorrow.
24th?
I'm not in
Week off?
town on the next Monday. I can tell you that right now. I'm out of state.
What's the what's the proposal right now?
So
What are you asking?
that we would have a candidate discussion amongst the board members on the 13th
Correct.
with the.
And so if there's anyone that's interested in being being the supervisor from this board, that they can present themselves and we have a conversation about that.
Why can't we do that right now?
I don't want to put people on the spot if they can.
Because we have everybody here now. I mean, if that's
I don't have a problem
if
with
that's
that.
the,
If that's,
the direction the board wants to go, as opposed to opening it to a public. I was just looking for the most transparent way of doing this. was
of
what my
course,
thought
well, we have to
process
do it
was.
publicly.
Not the publicly, just being broader. But that's fine.
Yeah.
Because everybody on the board could still put in, was what I was thinking. Anybody of the four that have expressed indirect or direct interest would still be able to do that.
It's the voting part of it that becomes interesting. If you put your name in, it becomes a challenge in the voting process if you're interested in the position yourself. So that's
You
what I'm
have,
saying.
everybody has a vote.
I know that. I get that. I'm
not
just saying.
Following, sorry.
I'm just saying that if we can give people an opportunity, if there's anybody here that's interested in it, speak up. But I was gonna give people a week to do that. But if you want to do that here tonight, I'm okay with that too. I don't want to slow the process or delay it because we are on a tight timeline.
Mhm.
So it's whatever is the pleasure. If
Yes.
people are interested and you want to speak up tonight,
I don't know what we would do if we spoke up tonight. Would make a presentation and that's it? And then we come back, in 2 weeks and then follow up on that conversation? Is that what you're proposing?
No, it could be a vote tonight. It could be a vote.
No, yeah, we could, but if, the board wants to do that, I don't know how the outcome will be, but
Mary, how long do you need for the, if we make this public? Is there a set amount of time?
No,
Okay,
if we made it public tomorrow or tonight, since
or next week, we would still,
this is a public meeting, then I was just picking
yeah. no,
basically the rest of this week and next week.
Just kind of food for thought for everyone. Perhaps we consider setting a schedule for a public open process for applicants that could include the board And prior to that, if we're able, I don't know if it's possible to have that as kind of the plan if we are not able to identify someone or there's not sufficient support for anyone from the board. So we've got a plan established to move forward with a public process. Should we not be able to reach a consensus for someone amongst us existing on the board to serve in that capacity? I don't know if that's just so we kind of have everything established to move forward.
So can we just, if we go by, trustee Brewer's concept here, can we push the timeline? I know you gave the timeline, which would be like, what, 29th, 30th interviews, and then we can make a decision. I mean, we can push that timeline by a week, and that we would still be able to fit. It would give us a week to, I guess, vote among us, and then the rest of the timeline that you were trying to present. That's.
Well, I'm not clear what you're
I guess,
recommending.
from what I understood, I thought we were looking at both, right? Either taking a week and maybe coming back next week, right? And making a vote so that we haven't, any candidate can just present. And so that's what I'm saying. If we go by your timeline, can we push it if we do it that way? If we do both methods?
So what are you suggesting? Give me dates. What are you?
I was just saying pushing that February, the 29th and 30th, if we just push everything to the right by 1 week.
Mary.
Are you looking, I don't know if it makes sense to like the 20th, we come back, our next meeting.
Yeah.
We can have the discussion, excuse me, about amongst us, anyone as an existing board member to serve in that role. Assuming if we don't reach a decision, a consensus on someone for that position, then we could have a deadline of the 24th for public applicants. And then begin that process the following week with extra meetings to do interviews.
So we could give 4 days for people from the public to respond.
But they know now.
You let them know in advance.
But there would be the awareness now that if their decision isn't reached on the 20th, by the 24th, if they're
Resumes will be
interested, they
due.
should apply.
I like that time.
That way right tonight, everyone knows that timetable. That's why I was just suggesting trying to be.
And Dennis, you'll be in town on the 20th.
Yeah, I will, yeah. But I just want to be on record that I don't support,
It's the
having an open.
21st, by the way. It's
Pardon?
Oh,
Tuesday,
yes.
the 21st.
That's
Oh,
that's
okay,
right.
the holiday.
I just.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just, I just want to let everybody know, I'm not in support of having an open, application process and having everybody who might be interested. I remember how many people came out of the woodwork when, you.
It was over 30 people.
Was a candidate and, there was a long lengthy process and all that. And, and my concern is that there are potential people that might be interested, who isn't interested in being appointed to something. They don't have to run for anything. They don't have to spend any money for anything. They have to maybe go through an interview process. I mean, who doesn't want that? But what I feel is that if you really want to be involved, you've probably shown it in the past and you're going to show it in the future. And that would be through an election process. That's where I'm coming from on this process. And I just don't think, I'm not comfortable in having a free-for-all of having anybody who's interested and have an interview to express that and be appointed to something that they haven't really necessarily been involved in. And, if we're talking about a caretaker here, then let's just talk about it that way. But I don't consider if we were to appoint someone as a caretaker. I don't know what that says about us as a township either. So it just makes me uncomfortable that we're considering going down that route for the reasons that I just elaborated on.
That's what we do every 4 years. When the whole township board is up for election.
That's what I'm saying that we should follow.
But I'm just saying, there's this, to say that, I'm just not following your
rationale to say that we can't do appointments from resumes because we don't know what we're getting, but every 4 years when the whole township board is up, we don't really know what we're getting either. But what we did with Fonda, we did have 30 or
It was over
31
30.
applications, and we all narrowed it down, and I think we
To five.
only interviewed 5. So if we had a cast of 1,000, we could still narrow it down
Yeah.
to the number, a reasonable number that we were going to interview. When I was appointed clerk, there were 17 people that applied and 17 people were interviewed. Yes.
Yeah, to add to the treasurer's comments, we just came through an election. Every single citizen of voting age in the township had the ability to file for office, to run for supervisor, to run for any of the offices that we were just reelected to. And I have been told by my colleagues in the past, making hard decisions is why we're elected. That's why we're here, is to make decisions on people's behalf. I also interviewed for the vacant position when Janet Newman left, and there were 30-some people. 2 years later, only 6 of us ran for trustee. So all those people, as you said, who wanted to be appointed, didn't want to have to spend the time, the effort, the money to be elected. And so those of us here on the board who already did go through that time and effort and money to be reelected. And again, I would say, if we can't find leadership within ourselves and the experience that we have on this board, I think going outside and looking for someone else is going to bring in an unknown quantity. And, as a caretaker, as a leader, whatever, what I'm looking for in a supervisor is someone who will bring balance, who will listen to all parties, will respect all opinions, will embrace ideas, even if they are not their own idea. That's what I'm looking for. And I would be happy tonight to hear everybody who's interested, just give us your elevator pitch of why you want to be the supervisor. And then we can talk about it and vote on it. Save the $25,000. We don't need to spend $25,000 on top of all the money that was just spent in an election. We knew weeks ahead of time that that election was not going to result in a supervisor for us. Interviews, you're going to get everyone coming out of the woodwork. I think we should choose someone from within our team, make the hard decision.
Is that a motion?
Make a motion to request those who are interested.
Well, somehow we have to come to a definitive position on how we're going to handle this. So there's some
Okay.
clear opposition to opening this to the public and we've had some very talented people that have contacted me to say that they are interested in this position. Some very talented people. So I'm not really comfortable with the thought that I don't want to convey to the public that I think that we're not going to get a quality candidate coming out of the public process. Because I think it's certainly very possible if the people that have expressed interest to me that we could have quality candidates off the board also. I'm just not really exactly understanding the hesitation to putting board members that want to be considered with people from the public that want to be considered. But if the consensus of the board is not to do that, then we move to another plan. And that timeline suggested, I lost it. The timeline suggested would put a little bit of a squeeze on it, but still certainly doable. We wouldn't probably have an answer till the 17th. Well, our time is up, so we can't. We have to make a decision prior to the 15th of February.
Right.
Well, I would like to make a motion. I move that any current board members who are interested in being appointed to the supervisor position, that you stand up this evening and give us your reasoning for why you would like to be the supervisor.
I would ask them to go to the podium and if there's a second and
Well, sorry, before we had to have a second, I was just gonna say, is there objection to two-pronged approach to I realize the preference that you've conveyed in seeking someone internal, but is there an objection to the two-pronged approach to kind of allow till the 21st for a board decision and then move with a
With the public.
prompt public process, a concise public process of applications? I just think it might be helpful to be prepared in case there is not a consensus amongst the board for that, and be prepared for that tonight.
Get it done tonight.
Well, that's with the assumption there's a consensus. Okay.
I would support that two-prong method. Like, that's what I was trying to say before. If we can't come to a consensus, then at least we've opened it up to the public.
so if I'm understanding, then on the 20th, any board
21st.
member would have submitted to the manager's office a resume and a letter of interest, and then each one would do
Yes.
Presentation.
their presentation the night of the 21st. I keep saying the 20th, 21st. I got the Monday on my brain, sorry. On the 21st, and then we would see if there are 4 votes for any
Mhm.
candidate. There has to be a minimum of 4
And it
votes.
would go to, if there's not,
Mhm.
it would then go to the second phase, which would be the.
Then we would have resumes
applications.
that would be received until the 24th, or could be submitted tomorrow. Anyone in anticipation, or.
I don't know that I would ask for that if it's on the table that there could be someone selected. I don't think that's fair to the public.
Could they
Say,
have 3
send me
days?
your resume and then, oh, sorry.
Okay, so they would have 3
I
days.
think we're
to
kind of
send
putting
the
them on
resume.
notice that this is gonna be the process. So get ready. You gotta be ready to, get ready to be
Be ready
ready.
to hit send?
That's right, that's right. But I am in
agree.
favor of that. I want to honor what Beth is saying, but I don't believe that there is consensus right here tonight.
No.
It's just being honest.
Right.
But I do think it's fair to let the ones who are interested prepare themselves and come before the board and tell you their why. And then we can take a vote or whatever it is we want to do. And then the other question is, if they're not selected through that process, can they then apply again with the other public applicants? I don't see why not.
Right.
So-
Yeah, I mean, there's there's
Because
nothing
you may, we
saying
may not
no.
find someone, although we have a great pool out there. So I wouldn't want to exclude anyone just because it didn't happen on the 21st.
So they would want to interview again.
If they're interested still, if they're still interested after the 21st, you put your name in again and you are included with the second phase. If that's amenable to Beth, because she has a motion out there.
I do
that-
have a motion, and I was gonna ask I'd like you to ask officially if there's any second, or if
Is
not.
there a second to Beth's motion?
Can you clarify what the motion is?
The motion was to request anyone who is interested in the supervisor position from the current board to stand up this evening and give us your why of why you want to be supervisor. I am not calling for a vote on it yet, but I'm thinking, we've had since September that we've known that this vacancy existed. And people have been thinking about whether they want it or not.
I can support that. I'll
If you
support
can't
that.
get up and speak for 2 minutes about why you want to be supervisor by now, then, it's not gelling for you.
Well,
I don't,
go ahead, Karen.
I'm sorry. I don't think that that's correct. I don't think that that's the way you should approach it. We did come tonight because we wanted to try to decide on on a selection process, on the way we were going to select it. I think hey, do it right now, and we'll decide right now that's not the.
I didn't say decide right now.
Well, basically, you're
Not
saying
voting
give your
necessarily,
two,
but I
well,
want to hear it.
I just don't think that's the correct approach. I'm sorry.
And if I may jump in, I think that's putting everybody on the spot, okay?
Yes.
And if, well, I mean, Beth, I mean, seriously, I mean, you're blindsiding everybody and said, okay, let's get up and say, I think I'd like to be supervisor because these are the skill sets that I bring and the talent, and all that sort of stuff. I think it'd be more productive if there was some time, so any one of us can articulate in the best manner possible as to why not only that he or she wants to be named supervisor for how long or whatever, but actually what you bring to the table and things like that. Because if you do it off the cuff, you may not necessarily think of everything and the important salient points that you want to bring up. Okay, so I just think for everybody's sake, who's going to participate in that, be given a little time to prepare for that. I just think that's the right thing to do. Yeah, we can say, raise your hand. Yeah, you're interested. Okay, and we'll come back and we'll make the case, at the next meeting, for example.
Well,
But-
I like the idea that, and I would support you, I would, but I like the idea, I'm ready to do it. I think you should be ready. But I do like the idea of our community being aware that we will speak next week. So they can come out.
2 weeks.
In
I'm
2
not
weeks,
here.
whatever it is, in
Yeah.
2 weeks, yeah, we're not gonna call a
2 weeks
special
from
meeting.
tomorrow.
The 21st.
Mhm.
So if they want to be present, they can be present. But for the sake of the motion, I support it.
You're supporting the motion?
I'm supporting and see where it goes. We can
Okay.
vote on it,
It's
please.
been moved and seconded to have, and I'm assuming that you're putting the parameters. If you don't speak tonight, then you're not considered on the 21st.
No,
Hmm.
not necessarily. I just
What's the
don't
purpose of
understand
tonight then?
why we're
Really?
delaying this again.
Show me your interest.
Yeah, we have three ways we can do about that. We can choose someone from the board, we can do interviews of the general public, or we can let it go to special election. Well, let's see, who wants to be chosen from this group first? We haven't heard, there's been, behind the scenes, there have been individuals talking, but let's speak in public. Who is interested? Because the public doesn't necessarily know who is interested in being the supervisor.
Make a friendly amendment. Because I get where you're going with this, but can we change it to just say that you're interested? And then you come back on the 21st and do your presentation. Would that help? Would that help you? Would that help? You just wanted.
Will you accept the friendly amendment?
Yes, yes.
We have an amendment for those. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No,
No.
There you
There you go.
go. Okay,
Okay,
so we're to Plan B. I think,
sort
Yes.
of.
which is board members will need to submit a resume and a cover letter, and be prepared to address the board on the 21st with why they feel they're the best candidate. And then we will vote that night. If someone gets 4 votes, we're done. If someone doesn't get 4 votes, on the 24th would be a deadline for community resumes.
Mhm.
And clearly, there's nothing to stop anybody from doing it now.
Nothing.
I want to be clear about
Absolutely,
that
right.
because it's hanging out there. And then, depending on those numbers of resumes, we will make a decision at some point, we'll have to schedule another meeting.
Yep.
To do interviews, because I originally thought the 29th, but if we haven't picked who we want to interview, if
Right.
there are more than a reasonable amount. We'll set the next date after.
Can we set a board meeting on the 27th
We could set a board meeting the 27th.
to then maybe narrow down
Or to narrow.
for the interviews and then do the interviews that week?
We've done that before too.
Because we basically we really need to make a decision
The
at
first
our
week.
February
February
3rd
3rd.
board meeting. Or do a special meeting the week,
Yeah, we
but
only have 2 more regular meetings.
So, and then, and on the, 21st, we'll solidify exactly the dates and the process.
Right.
If that next step is necessary.
Right.
If it's finalized on the 21st, it's finalized.
Right.
I move
I'm
that
not- I
approach.
can support it.
I
But
support it.
it's a consensus of the board.
I move
I
that
support-
approach.
Um,
Do you need me to state that?
we've had a,
Oh,
I think we have it, but you're welcome to restate it.
so I move. Gosh, I gotta restate it. I want to make sure I state it correctly. I move that any current board members interested in being considered for appointment, notify the manager. I'm assuming we're doing it by the 20th
Via a resume.
with a
and-
resume and
And a letter of intent,
intent
cover letter.
for the board to consider at the November, January 21st board meeting. If a consensus is not reached at that meeting, we will accept public resumes and letters of intent until close of business 5 p.m. on the 24th,
Yes.
and then begin
Yeah.
the process that following week of.
And you supported that?
I support that.
Okay, it's been moved by Andrea, supported by Karen to move that process forward. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Motion carries. And just as a reminder, everybody should be prepared to do a public presentation on the 21st.
Yes.
Yes.
One last comment. I want to make it clear to the public, anyone who doesn't know, that anyone who is currently on the board, if they go up for supervisor and they are not voted in, if they interview with public members and they aren't voted in, if it goes to a special election and they're selected as the candidate and they are not voted in as the supervisor, they still retain the position that they are, that they have now on the board. So there is zero risk of losing the position no matter what way we go. And I just want to make that clear to the public if that was not clear to them in the past.
Good question.
Correct. Okay. Moving on. Brian, managers report.
Thank you. Happy New Year to the board members. I just wanted to congratulate Captain Robert Cassie. It's always tough to lose people to retirement, but Robert's had a long distinguished career and very solid for our department, always been a very good employee, so sad to see him go, but happy for him as well. I just wanted to let you know, Peter did pass out his list of projects. So if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. I wanted to pass this certificate around that we received from the State Tax Commission. This just commemorates our assessing department for their perfect score on the PA 660 assessment audit review. So I know I had mentioned this at a previous meeting. I'll pass it this way if you want to look at it. I know I had mentioned it previously, but it is a fairly significant accomplishment, and I know our assessing department kind of considers it ho-hum, but it is something I think that we should really highlight because it is a terrific accomplishment. Mary Werland sent out some dates for different events for the board. The MLK luncheon coming up, the MTA conference at the end of March, and the Michigan Municipal League Capital Conference also in March. Also, we are nearing the end of the construction of the sheriff's substation. So we're working on planning a ribbon cutting. So we'd like to make that a pretty big event, but right now we're looking at the Tuesday, Thursday, roughly around January 28th or 30th. So we want to, what we've discussed is having a fairly large ribbon cutting with dignitaries and that type of thing on one of the days, and then potentially a tour on a different day for members of the public or that type of thing. So want to do this before we get everybody moved in, but we're really close to the end. If you drive by, they have the Delta Patrol sign up, so it really ties in with the sheriff and the Delta Township logo. The inside is coming along very nicely. So I wanted to just give you an update on those dates, and we'll be finalizing those as quickly as possible.
Sorry to interrupt you, Brian. Did you say the 30th?
Right now, the 28th or 30th
Okay,
are two dates that we've are kind of holding.
of January.
Yeah, we'll need to land on that, given where we are with all of this,
Sure.
so that.
Mhm. So obviously, there's some we are planning, have to wait to make sure that all the construction is done, and then we want to reach out to a couple people, namely the sheriff, some members of the county, but wanted to mention it here at this board so we could start preparing for that.
Okay.
And that is all I have for tonight, but happy to answer any questions from the board.
Okay. And then, thank you. There's no questions. Next on the agenda is the committee of the whole and board member appointments. Fonda, you had some questions that you were looking to ask.
Actually, I just wanted to see if we had covered everything. I think we covered everything that was immediate. Was there any other committees? I don't know that we heard from everyone on the board if there's something, a committee that they'd like to serve on. So I don't know if we had that conversation. I know we addressed the more immediate ones that had meetings coming right up.
I'm not aware of any others besides the ones that we.
I'm not aware of any other than the ones that we presented in the memo and that we made appointments to. There could be some ad hoc that we did not include, but I'm not aware of any.
Good. I just wanted to make sure everyone had an opportunity.
There will be an appointment for a delegate to vote at the annual meeting of the MTA that will be coming up that we'll have to do, but that's the only other thing that I can think of.
Is that a supervisor typically?
I think that's is that it's MML?
MML.
Yeah, and that's
Sorry.
typically been either myself or Dennis, I believe. The delegate.
Have you done
Would you
MML,
like
Dennis?
to attend the annual business meeting?
Pardon?
Would you like to attend the annual business meeting at the MML?
As long as it's annual.
Yes. Yes, that would be the last one coming up.
But we
Okay.
can put that on the
Yes.
agenda for the 21st.
Sounds good.
What about
Well,
the,
that would be in the summer of 25,
Yeah.
because that comes out, they ask for that typically a month or month and a half
So
before.
it's not the March one, it's the fall one?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. For future reference.
Add it to the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beth, did you have a question?
yeah, the election commission? I only recall in my first 4 years that trustee Mojica was appointed. So does that mean that trustee Cascarella has been appointed to the election commission for longer than 4 years? Okay, should,
There is no term.
okay, I see that, but should we ask if there are other members who might be interested in being
Yes.
on the election commission?
Just
For the
point of
future.
clarification, I replaced Howard Pizzo
Mhm.
when he no longer served on the board. There were 2 commissioners.
And so Karen has
I've
been
been
on for,
Since my first term.
since Jeff, maybe
10
since Jeff Hicks left, I think you replaced
Jeff,
Yes, I think, okay, maybe.
can't remember.
What is the purpose of that board?
It meets only attached to elections. It, accepts the list of election workers. It accepts that staff will conduct the election. It accepts, precinct consolidations,
Public test.
public test, and they
Mhm.
work with the public test, which
It's very
anybody in the public can come and be
Very
part of the
election.
public test, yes.
And there can be two members from the board?
There are two members.
Okay, right now it's Andrea and Karen.
Correct.
And are you both interested in continuing to serve on that?
Was planted.
Yes, I am.
No, I thought you were.
No, I'm not
Okay.
interested in the election. I just wanted to make sure that all of the boards and commissions we discussed, because that just hasn't happened in the past. So I just wanted them out, recorded, listed, so that we know what all of those boards and commissions are and what they do and who's appointed. So do we need to reappoint them at the next meeting, or they're good?
No,
no, it's
There's
indefinite.
no
It's
term.
indefinite.
Right.
Should there be a term?
By law, there is no
State law.
term.
I
It's
see.
indefinite.
Yeah. I didn't know
So
that part.
I have just done it, and I think before me, Janice did it based on when someone left or asked to be replaced. So, or obviously, if people didn't come and I couldn't get a quorum, I would not be happy with them, so. But I haven't had that, so. So we're good with all of that right now. And then, the conference policy, I will just jump out on that one. I had brought up, a while ago that, I had wanted, well, I talked with the former supervisor more than once about it, but I have a serious interest in a line item be established for each board member for attending events, so that, for example, the MLK, if you commit to going to MLK and the tickets are $50 or $75, that would be charged against your line item. If you went to Mackinac Island for MML's conference, that would be charged against, and all expenses would be charged against your line item. City of Lansing does it that way. I don't know how other people do, but I'm putting it out for discussion. Beth.
So I can go to conferences and have the township pay for that enrichment that I am learning and networking and that sort of thing. Or I can say, look, I spent no money on going to conferences this year. I saved the township money. But then I lose out on all that training and networking and all that sort of thing because my name is attached to a line item. And, not every year does MML go to Mackinac Island. Sometimes they go to Grand Rapids. And if that were the case, then I wouldn't even spend the night there. I would just go to the day and not have hotel and that sort of thing. I think it would be smarter to look at the year's conferences, have board members say, these are the conferences I want to go to, and say, okay, well, we don't need all 6 of us to go to one conference. We can have 3 go to one conference, 3 go to another conference if there is overlap, or, just look at the breadth of them and be smart about where we're sending people and the information that they're bringing back to us rather than just a dollar amount.
Andrea, did you have a comment? Or
No, go ahead,
ahead.
because my comment wasn't really related
Yeah.
to that, so.
I don't necessarily agree with, I understand where you're going with the line item, but I also don't necessarily say that we should split. You take MLK, you take MTA or something like that. That's not fair because it's there for the purpose of us being educated and for training. And you can't, like I do, every time I go, I get something new. I network, I meet other people from other, townships, and I get something out of it. I talk to them, okay, this is how you do it, et cetera. So for you to say to split that way, I don't agree with that. So if we want to look at also the, for the year, for the conferences, but there's also the little ones, right? I think it's MML and MTA also put on these little conferences during the year. So who's to say that, hey, I want to do that one, but something comes up at the last minute and now what? What do we do? So we're kind of like, you know, bounding ourselves if we do it that way. So I don't know if we just say, what have we used before, or what have we done in the past years? Maybe we start with a generic number and we go from there, et cetera. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Well, along the lines what trustee Mohica was saying, you know, I've had an interest in the evolving changes to AI and how that's affect governing and how government can use that. And every conference I go to, it doesn't matter which one has an AI component, and it's changing every year. And so you get these updates. So again, to be picking and choosing, well, I'll go to this one, but I don't go to that one. And, you know, you're missing out on, you know, that sort of interaction with what the latest developments are and how my example is how AI can actually help, you know, a local unit of government conduct its business. So that is one of my pet interests, you know, what I go there for to study. So the question is that looking at, you know, previous years, I wondered if they've been artificially low in the original budgeted amount of $6,000. I mean, that's less than $1,000 per trustee. And 22 was the same amount, and 23, it was the same amount. But the expended funds actually rose probably with the participation and with the cost of inflation of putting these conferences on. Okay. And so the last year was the amount that's in our packet. And the question I have is that really out of line? You know, if you add up the individual, excuse me, the members of the city council, is that less than what our line item is? If you add them all up, or is it more? So there's no really comparison here that I can judge this by. And the other question I have is the Meridian example. And the last line says up to $10,000 per fiscal year. Is that the total amount or is that per trustee?
I read it as a total amount. We pulled that from their policy guidebook.
So there's 7 trustees in Meridian Township. They only have a line item for, was that for each individual or is that?
No, total.
That's for
They're all looking for $1,000 for the entire board of trustees of Meridian Town. I find that hard to believe. So that's the question.
Why-
on
we-
clarification.
we have
Last year
7.
Last year we had 7,000, but
No,
Well, they have 7 too. Yeah. So.
Andrea.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple comments, not necessarily in response to comments that have already been made, but just thoughts that I had on this. I think it's important that we remember these are taxpayer dollars, and I totally appreciate the benefit and the opportunity we all have in attending, because there is a great deal of information. MML, MTA put on outstanding conferences, and there's a tremendous amount to learn and also build relationships with counterparts in other communities that you learn about things they're doing. So I'm not at all opposed to being able to participate. I do feel strongly, though, that we should have a policy. Right now, our policy has no limits on what that participation can be and no accountability there. And I do think out of respect to all of the taxpayers in Delta Township, that we should put some limits on that in some cap. What that amount is, I'm not sure, but then each of us can make those decisions to prioritize what's most important. I also, and I don't know with our language in our current policy, sorry, my screen cleared. It talks about the compensation, and I didn't know how to read this, but I know in what was pulled in the memo, it stated mileage and expense reimbursements, attendance to seminars and conferences, professional organization memberships, and it talks about being related directly to the job of the board member. Which I'm assuming directly related to this job as elected officials representing the township. Is that for all of those? It's everything should be related, directly related to the job of the role of the township on the township board? Is that the correct reading of that current policy?
Yes.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
I would think it should be.
That's what I thought. I just thought so too. And if it wasn't, I was just gonna suggest that we be clear that's all of our participation, whether it's mileage, the conference costs, hotels, it should be directly related to township. And in my mind, that's kind of like MML, MTA. Perhaps there's something else that should pop up. Clerks, I don't know if there's something else, some other conferences, but again, I think it should have, but I absolutely support, I think it sends a message to all of the residents in the community that pay taxes and support township government, that we have some limit on that. I think it's an oversight that we don't, and it just shows some constraint there, and we should probably reach a consensus about, I know we have a amount set in the budget. I don't know if it's dividing that amount equally amongst the 7 members, how that should be.
No, because mine comes out of my clerk's budget,
Okay, yours is
clerk
separate
department budget.
because you're required by
And
law.
Dennis's parts of his that are
Comes out.
Come on.
applicable to his role as treasurer comes out of the treasurer,
Okay, so it's
out
not-
of the
But-
accounting budget. So there's some, a little bit,
Yeah.
mostly it applies to the trustees and the supervisor
okay,
who don't have like.
a
I have-
budget.
I
for
have
it.
certifications that I have to do.
Right.
So that's it, that's why it's been wrapped in. And one of the things I've always been really proud of, and I think one of the things that makes Delta stand out, is we have always been very supportive in the broadest sense of our staff attending trainings and keeping current and doing that. And so I think that while I appreciate Beth's thought on this, I think that the budget should allow everyone to go to the basic things that are associated with the township, that are associated with our memberships. We're members of MTA, we're members of MML. And I think that it's important that if the schedule allows and the interest is there, because we all get pretty much what the program's gonna be before you have to make a commitment. Does it work for you to attend those? It's equally important for board members to stay up to date and aware and know what law changes are and things. So I think the gray area comes from what are the parameters? What are the rails for what is beyond the basic MML and MTA? What is acceptable? Fonda.
I like the direction you're going in. I think that our public, I think, expects us to continue to sharpen the saw for each other, to go to these conferences and learn what's new and to network with like-minded members of different areas in the state. So I am all for training and development. I think it's absolutely important. I also think there needs to be more of an accountability factor, that when we go, that we're reporting back of some sorts. If there's something that we can share, we should. And in terms of, I think the 2 main conferences, I agree with you, Mary, that those are our 2 main conferences that we get a lot out of. I don't always go to MTA because some of once I see their programming, I don't find it as effective as MML that year. So it really depends on what's on the program for that conference. I think we make those decisions. So I think, but to set a limit beyond those 2 conferences, I would need more data. I don't know what that figure would be. I just don't know, because I don't know what else others are doing. I don't know what is done in other municipalities. I think there just needs to be a little bit more information if we're gonna set a dollar amount. That, other than, I think it should be acceptable if you want to go to MML and MTA. That's good, that's covered for you as a board member.
And I think, did you have something?
Well, I'm just gonna add something when you're done.
I'm done. I'm just saying, those two, I think, should be a given if you choose to go. Outside of that, if there's something, I know this past year I went to League of Cities Conference, which I found very interesting. So I attended that. And there were so many workshops. That's where I learned more about housing. And it was very beneficial for me to learn about what's happening around the nation with regards to housing. So, and I was able to make some good networks and bring back some ideas. So, but I don't always go to that. So there might be something that you may want to go to that might be appropriate. But I know for sure that the two conferences that I think we should always be in support of are MTA and MML.
And one of the things could be that you would have to be pre-approved if you wanted to do something beyond
MML.
those
Yeah.
MML and
Who's
MTA,
gonna
and that
approve it?
maybe
yeah,
that
the
would be
board,
approved, it would
yeah.
come to the board. Because we can't put Brian in that position.
No.
That is totally
Brian is
unfair
our
in his
employee.
role.
So you're
Right.
saying
He's
that,
our
so,
employee.
so even if we get like those, because I do quite a few of those during the year, like the MTL or, I'm sorry, MTA or the MML, like those little conferences, the 1 day or 2 day workshops. So you're saying, so every single one of those, I'm gonna have to come up to the board and say, I want pre-authorization for that?
No.
No, we
No.
just, that MTA and MML events would be automatic beyond that scope.
Okay, so then, yeah, we would really need to define not only the money amount, because you want a line amount, right? You want
Doesn't have to be.
But-
I just want some kind of boundaries. I want some kind of rails.
Okay, I think it's the wording then, not just the monetary that we're, right, that we need to look
Yeah.
at. Okay.
I think what would be helpful for myself and our staff, just because the expenditures, as you mentioned, have risen, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but now there are more requests and some non-traditional requests. So obviously the MTA and MML have kind of been long-standing, along with a few other things like chamber events or the MLK luncheon. But there are starting to be some different requests, and there are some differences among board members in terms of appetite for, certain people pay for more, pay for their own flights, some don't. So I would just rather have, whatever it is, whether it's a cap or whether it's a kind of pre-approved or just transparency, bringing it back to the board so that myself or Mary or Aaron or somebody in our office is not put in the position of, well, we're over budget, or someone who's a high utilizer, to say, I'd rather, we've tried to increase the budget this year. I think you're right, not every year is gonna be on Mackinac Island. Not every year is there high utilization of the conferences. I just know this past year felt uncomfortable because we did exceed the budget, and I don't want to be put in a position of saying, well, now I don't think we should be going to that conference. I'd rather be held out of that. So that's for a board discussion or decision to have that and make those decisions.
I think that's very fair. So we can, Andrea?
Yeah, sorry, before I don't know if we're moving forward or off this conversation, but I just wanna, because you raised a point, I guess I wasn't aware of about airfare. I don't think we should be flying to MML and MTA conferences, and I'm not sure what airfare would be necessary. So I don't know if we should be paying for airfare or out-of-state travel. I think when it's in Michigan, there's plenty of opportunity for educational experiences here in the state. And that just leads me to feel even stronger. I do think there should be a cap per person. Again, I think we need some estimates on what that is. And it doesn't have to be a hard cap, but we have a cap, and if you're exceeding it, you're coming to the board for approval, because it's gonna require an adjustment in the budget anyhow. We have set amount in the budget, and if we're just gonna ignore that and not have any guardrails, I just feel very strongly there should be a limit, and it should not include air travel or out-of-state travel. I didn't realize that was a component of some of the participation or travel.
Madam Clerk, I'd like to respond to that. So you're personally aware, there's professional associations that you belong to. I belong to one called, the Governmental Association, Financial Officers Association. Okay, it's a national association. They have a Michigan contingent too. But really all the meat that you ever hear that's coming down from Gatsby for the next accounting principles that are coming down, or any of these other side issues like AI and all these other things I just described, really come forth at these national conferences. So when I was working with the state, I used to go to these things because I was also head of the accounting and all that sort of thing besides budget. And so I've been going to those for the last couple of years. I pay the airfare to go to these things, but I don't think it's inappropriate for the township to cover the registration or the hotel. Okay.
But I think it would be appropriate for that to come to the board to be aware of and approve. I had no idea.
So I have done that since day one, and it's a professional association that I belong to, as well as, our chief financial officer as well. So those are the kind of things where it kind of gets muddy. It isn't always a black and white situation.
Is there objection then on matters like that it just come to the board and the board approve that?
Why? Because it's out of state.
Yes.
There's a lot that don't allow out-of-state travel. A lot of my fellow clerks are not allowed to travel out of state.
So if I
Not that we
say,
would
if I come
oppose
before
it,
you and
but-
said I'm paying my airfare and I'm asking for the hotel and the registration, you want me to come and get permission from the board for this? Is that what you're suggesting?
It's, I think, awareness about how we're spending that money, and if it's,
Well,
yeah.
Andrea, I mean,
Awareness and
I mean,
approval are two different
the
things.
elephant in the room here is who's going to which conferences? I mean, it jumped up to $17,000. So, what's missing from this information is like, how much was expended for conferences for each individual board member? That's not here.
Yeah.
Detail.
And my understanding is that's what made staff uncomfortable. Okay, so if it's like, who's doing what, who's being less, I would say, sensitive to, utilizing boards and conferences that, are above and beyond what, the average of the other board members are doing, then it's not necessarily a problem with the entirety of the board. It might be with an individual or two.
And that may be a fair point. Maybe we just have the cap on the dollar and we don't cover airfare. And as long as you're under your dollar amount for conferences, that's your discretion. If you choose that's a priority.
So-
I think that's,
so-
I would just say that.
So the MML and the MTA is that part of that baseline? And then so if I go to the national conference and I'm paying my own airfare, but it bumps me up over that, then sorry, you've gone over your individual line item,
Then you have
Can't
to
do that.
seek approval. I thought that was what we talked about.
Yeah,
You
it was
have a cap. We all do as members of the board. There is a limit on how much taxpayer money we spend on conference and travel related to that. If you have a need to exceed that, it comes to the board for approval, because then that also exceeds what our budget is.
Well, then what we should see here is the addition of the treasurer's, amount and also the clerk's amount in this
It comes
amount.
out of a
And it should
different
be all
pot.
aggregated together and divided equally.
Right.
Wouldn't you?
Well, and it may not be equal. I don't know what all you may be required to do. I get that the clerks by law are required to maintain, to do trainings and attend, so it's a little bit different. I know there are legal requirements. statutory requirements for clerks. So I get that might be slightly different. So, but yes, I agree. People should have the same base budget for travel.
I just
So
think
so we
there's
take
more
this figure, we
information.
add, we add the treasurer and we add the clerk's, amount, and then that's the total, and then that's divided by 7. Is that what we're saying?
Say that again?
So what's missing from this figure is the clerk's travel and the treasurer's travel. Okay, so to be fair, what we would do is we would add that into that figure and then divide it by 7.
The 17,000. Add it to the 17,000
Yeah.
that's already budgeted.
What did we budget? What's in the budget for this year?
17.
That is but you took that's the figure that you put in for this year.
This year,
And that's
last
for
year,
I know last
people.
year was a lot less.
we were 10,000 over budget last year.
So you bumped it to 17. So 17 is where we
Five
are
people.
for,
That's for the
For
5.
this.
for 5, not for 7.
Right.
Correct.
Because there's a budget for you to elsewhere, which we don't know. It'd be nice to know.
Well, no,
What that
you
is.
see it every time it's in the budget that you approve, but yes.
It just comes out of a different pot.
Yes, different pocket. Okay.
So instead of money, we're leaning towards specifying conferences. So MTA, MML.
And anything else you come to the
Well,
board?
MTA, MML, that's all I've gone to except for the Greater Lansing Arts thing that we went to, which was $50 a piece, and I didn't even
Local stuff.
charge mileage or anything. And MLK, but then we could have an in-state policy, out-of-state, we could have the 1 days. If the registration fee is over $100, $500 or something like that, I think that there's room to be more specific rather than just hard dollar amount.
Pre-approved list.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
like you said, MML, MTA,
And anything outside of that, you present it,
Mhm.
you know, why
Yeah.
it's of value to you to go
Mm-hmm.
and you go from there.
So write more of a policy to go along with the budget.
That's.
Well,
That's
yeah, I
what's
think
missing.
really,
Yeah, the wording then the-
I think the policy is really what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Right. I
That's
mean,
what's
really,
missing.
that's the piece for me, like, so that we are taking the manager's office out of the position of having to manage something for people who are their boss. That's where it gets.
trying to be
Dicey.
proactive.
Well, we go over budget on a lot of things, and then we
Yeah.
have year end.
So it's really the policy, so we can work on a couple
Yeah,
options
first,
and
okay.
talk about it,
That sounds good.
again, and.
So just
Yep.
update it, but with some parameters, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, bring us some language.
Yeah, I'm most interested in a policy. So, because there can be reasons why
That's how much it is for
someone goes somewhere,
Absolutely.
but
per person.
And not all of us can go to 3 or 4 day conferences, because I got other responsibilities in my life. So I go when I can, but I can't always go.
okay,
Increase
so
the cost of
that's,
conferences.
we'll come back at some point in the future. So are there any other, back and find
Yeah,
my
public
agenda.
comment, I think.
Are there any other public comments from anyone in the audience?
Good evening. I'm Michelle Hart from 4509 Mayford Street here in Delta Township. And I just wanted to go back to your discussion earlier about the open position for supervisor on the board. And I didn't bring my copy tonight of the authorities and responsibilities of a township board book. But from that, the research that I did, the township board, if you appoint somebody for it would be for a 2-year term and they would be up for reelection in 2026. But if you did do a special election in May, that would be for a 4-year term. So I think there
The
was a little bit of
remainder,
discussion, but yeah, the remainder of the 4-year term. And then the only other comment that I wanted to make was, and I understand, I appreciate your discussion earlier about appointing somebody from the board, but it is for an open position on the board. And so you are elected to serve the office that you were elected to serve. You're serving the office that you are elected to serve. And as a candidate for an open seat, you are a resident of Delta Township, just like the rest of the residents in Delta Township. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sherry Ritchie from 1206 Brookside Drive. I also wanted to make a few comments on the supervisor position. It is an elected position, not an appointed position. It's terribly unfortunate that we're all in the situation we're in, and it's very unfortunate events that got us here. Be that as it may, it is an elected position, and I believe we should have an election. I appreciate the desire to save the township money, but that is first and foremost the way that we put people in elected positions. They're elected, they're not appointed. So that's my stance on it. I would be in favor of holding an election, a special election. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Just for point of clarification, following the law as it stands, Michigan law, it is first the appointment and then the election if no appointment can be made. So we're not making it up, just for point of clarification. We are following the law. Any other questions, comments? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you.